Football has always been more than just a game of goals, tactics, and trophies. It's theater, a grand stage where heroes rise, hearts break, and sometimes villains steal the show. For decades, football's villains were the heartbeat of its drama. They were unapologetic, fiery, and often ruthless. Players who'd win at all costs, even if it meant crossing the line. From Diego Costa's snarls to Sergio Ramos's crunching tackles, from Gennaro Gattuso's madness to Roy Keane's fury, these men gave football its chaos, its edge, and its passion. But somewhere along the line, the sport began to change. The modern game polished its image, cleaned up its characters, and replaced rage with restraint. Today, players are media-trained, brand-friendly, and careful not to offend. Football has never been more technical or beautiful, yet in this perfect picture, something feels missing. The unpredictability, the rivalry, the raw emotion that villains once brought to every pitch. We used to love hating them. Now, without them, the game feels a little too quiet.
There was a time when football's heartbeat was wild and unpredictable. Matches weren't just tactical battles, they were emotional wars fought by men who wore their hearts on their sleeves. These were football's villains, fierce, flawed, and unapologetically human. They weren't afraid to be hated because they understood that every great story needs someone to play the bad guy. Think of Diego Costa, football's agent of chaos. He wasn't graceful, but he was irresistible to watch, snarling, provoking, and scoring in equal measure. He made defenders nervous before the whistle even blew. Then there was Sergio Ramos, the perfect blend of class and cruelty, capable of winning a final with a heroic header or turning villain with a ruthless challenge moments later. And who could forget Luis Suárez, perhaps the most complex villain of them all? Brilliant, fiery, and unpredictable, Suárez blurred the line between genius and madness. He could score a hat trick of world-class goals and then, in the same breath, ignite global outrage with a single reckless act. Whether it was a handball that saved his nation or the infamous bites that made headlines, Suárez was unapologetically himself, flawed, passionate, and utterly captivating. His controversies never overshadowed his brilliance. Instead, they became part of his legend. Gennaro Gattuso played like every game was a street fight, chasing every ball with raw emotion and fearless energy. And Roy Keane, the enforcer, led with intimidation, commanding respect through sheer willpower and controlled fury. These men gave football its drama. They made victories feel earned and rivalries feel personal. Their tempers, confrontations, and controversies weren't distractions. They were the pulse of the game. In their flaws, we saw authenticity. In their rage, we saw passion. And through them, football felt alive.
But somewhere along the line, football began to change. The game that once thrived on raw emotion and imperfect characters slowly polished itself into something cleaner, safer, and more commercial. Clubs became global brands, players became marketable assets, and image started to matter as much as performance. In this new era, controversy was no longer passion, it was bad PR. Modern players are trained to stay calm, composed, and careful. Every word, gesture, and tweet is monitored. Outbursts are fined, celebrations are scripted, and aggression is seen as unprofessional. Social media has turned footballers into public figures first and competitors second. And with the rise of VAR, even the chaos of the game has been tamed. Every clash, every late tackle, every heated moment slowed down, reviewed, and sanitized. Of course, the modern game is beautiful. The technique, the precision, the professionalism. It's the most polished football has ever been. But in the pursuit of perfection, something vital has been lost. That unpredictability, that raw fire that made fans scream, argue, and feel, it's fading. The game is smarter, yes, but also quieter. We rarely see a true villain anymore, not because players don't care, but because the game no longer allows them to show it. Football has become spotless, and maybe, in doing so, it has lost a bit of its soul.
If you have made it this far, please consider subscribing and liking the video. This helps me very much. Now let's continue.
So, why do we miss them? The players who bent the rules, who made us shout at our screens, who played with fire even when it burned them. Maybe it's because, deep down, football was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be emotional. The villains gave the game its tension, its chaos, its storytelling. They made every match feel like a movie, every rivalry like a war. When Diego Costa taunted defenders, it wasn't just mischief, it was theater. When Ramos clashed with Barcelona stars, it wasn't just aggression, it was part of a larger story, a good versus evil narrative that made El Clásico the spectacle it was. These players gave football identity. They gave heroes someone to rise above, and fans someone to despise. Without them, football loses contrast. And with no darkness, the light doesn't shine as bright. The bad guys made fans feel something real. You could hate them one week and admire them the next. They reminded us that football isn't just about skill, it's about emotion, conflict, and character. Their presence made every victory sweeter, every defeat more painful, and every rivalry unforgettable. We don't miss the fouls, the red cards, or the chaos itself. We miss what those moments represented, passion without filter. In a world where everything is polished and rehearsed, those raw flashes of humanity made football feel alive.
Football today is faster, smarter, and more global than ever before. The players are fitter, the pitches smoother, and the tactics more refined. The sport has evolved, and in many ways, for the better. The game is safer, cleaner, and more respectful. Yet, for all that progress, there's a quiet nostalgia that lingers among fans. Because even as football perfects itself, it feels like it has lost a little of its soul. The villains, the Costas, the Keanes, the Pepes, reminded us that football was about more than trophies or statistics. It was about emotion, imperfection, and pride. They gave the game texture, color, and conflict. Without them, football sometimes feels like a stage with no antagonist, a story missing its edge. But maybe the villains haven't truly disappeared. Maybe they've just been hidden behind modern football's polished surface, waiting for a new generation bold enough to break the rules, challenge the image, and bring back the chaos that made this game so captivating. Because football without villains is like a story without tension. Beautiful, yes, but missing the fire that made us fall in love with it in the first place. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with the story. Football is changing, but the passion we share for it never fades. So if you enjoyed this video, if you missed the villains just as much as the heroes, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, who was your favorite football villain of all time?